All right, so excited to talk today about a topic that I know a lot of people are going to confront at some point in their career, be it in audit or consulting or any form of project management, really, but how to step into a new client engagement or new project and execute excellently. And I'm here with some folks who know a thing or two about that with a variety of different perspectives. We'll start off with Flo. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and I just on the spot, how many different projects or client engagements have you been involved with?
Oh, wow. I'll have to count. But I've been at Embark for a little bit over 4 years. I'm a manager in the FAST practice, and I primarily worked on oil and gas clients. Top of my head, maybe about 6 to 8 clients during my time at Embark.
Awesome. And before Embark?
I was at PwC, so I was in audit for a year.
Okay. And we're also here with Tyler Stage. Welcome. How are you?
Good.
How about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and roughly how many different engagements or projects have you been on?
Here at Embark, I don't know, dozen or so, maybe. A lot of my clients have been really long-term. So probably for someone who's been here 5 years, I'm sure a lot of other people have higher number, but my clients have been long-term. And then before Embark, I was at PwC in audit there for a few busy seasons and then made the jump to Embark.
Awesome. Well, glad you're here. And our newbie, no consulting experience, never been on a project before, Mr. Jason Larkin, welcome.
You had me back for another episode. I appreciate it, Kyle. Jason Larkin, nice to be here again. So for those of you who haven't had the chance to get to share some of my perspective with before, started my career in audit, spent 3.5 years there, moved over to the consulting side, spent about 9 years in consulting, and have been with Embark for the past 2 years, currently serve as our Dallas market president. And in terms of clients that I've served throughout my career, it's probably somewhere in the 60 to 70 range, just across all of the different years and different types of services that I provide to clients throughout the years.
Awesome. And I've never worked on any of the types of projects. So I'll be asking questions as somebody who is like jumping into this for the first time. And I am just curious also, lots of different types of projects, but if you could maybe just touch on, some of the different problems that you might have been solving, or even like you mentioned, longer term engagements, just to kind of paint a picture of the different environments each of you have been in. And we'll start with you, Flo.
Yeah, so most of my clients have also been longer term engagements. A lot of them were out there for continuity reasons, whether it's they're understaffed or they have a massive problem that they need help with. So they'll bring in a team of consultants out there. So I've had anything from financial reporting to month-end close to special projects. So I've seen a variety of different things.
And how about you, Tyler?
Well, a lot of my more recent experience is in capital market space. So IPOs, mergers, business combinations. So that's the majority of my experience. But before I moved into that practice, similar to her, may have been a continuity role that turned into process improvement, that turned into, hey, go tackle this thing, or this over here takes us forever to do. There's got to be a better way. So a lot of, messy jobs, roll up your sleeves, dive into the details.
What haven't you done, Jason?
I haven't done any tax work ever. So there was one time, the first project I was ever on at Embark, they had a tax question. I said, this is one of the few, I've gotten exposed to a lot of different things in my career, but taxes is not something that I'm familiar with or exposed to at all. And that's why there are other tax professionals out there that can help support. So that's the one area I've not focused on, especially recently. Been working with Tyler a lot just in the capital market space, different IPOs and stuff. But yes, taxes is something that I know nothing about. So
I'm curious, when we kind of floated this topic out there, what was it about this particular topic? That there's a lot of really smart people here, not just technically, but learned so much about leadership from Jason and cultural development. But what is it about this topic that you said, I'm really passionate about this?
So I'm really passionate about this topic because I've seen firsthand how executing excellently at your clients creates a very positive impact to your teams, to your clients, and to yourself. It's understandable, in my opinion, that sometimes when you go on to do something new, it can sometimes be intimidating. So for me, being able to help others kind of feel comfortable to do that, to go out and execute excellently, I think it's very important.
What's it like walking into, something new, or, maybe going from audit to capital markets? I mean, how has that been for you, Tyler?
So walking into something new, one, it's exciting because you never do the same thing twice, but it's also scary at times, right? Because if you've never done this specific thing, sometimes you got to figure it out. But you can draw on previous experience. Like there's a bunch of stuff that's similar, right, that you can pull from. So you're not just starting with a blank paper. But yeah, I like it. I hate doing the same thing over and over and over. So it's nice to switch it up frequently.
And I mean, as Tyler just mentioned, there's going to be fundamentals or approaches that could be there, but the people are always going to be different. What is it about, developing in this area, but then also coaching people in this area that you're passionate about, Jason?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the opportunity to develop new relationships, right? With new clients, with new team members you work with internally here at Embark, right? A lot of the projects that we work on will have a new team. And so you get to build those relationships internally. And then you get to also build those relationships with our clients where you truly dive in, understand what are the actual problems that they're trying to solve and how can we truly make their life easier. That's one of the things that's cool when you think about a new project. It's a new opportunity to create a first experience with Embark or a first experience with our team and just start that off on the right foot and develop that relationship that's rooted in trust so that as they continue to be there, they call on us for incremental needs. Or if they go from one company to another, we're able to support their journey throughout their entire career. And it all starts with creating that positive experience in the first time that we engage and work with companies.
Would love to hear from all three of you on this, but when you think about your time in audit and then all of the different hats you've worn on different projects with different clients, is there one, when you think about it from beginning to end, whether it be different types of challenges or just the feeling of getting something across the finish line or being proud of executing excellently, is there a particular engagement that really stands out to you? And if so, what was it? What was about it?
I mean, there's several. Yeah. The thing I enjoyed the most is the human component of all this, like building that relationship with someone, right? Like personally impacting their lives at work, which frees them up to do the other stuff that they really want to do. And just partnering with them to make their lives easier.
Can you give me an example of, you mentioned like freeing them up to do the things they really want to do. Mm. I would imagine that when you're successful at that, you get to see not only, you executing this project, but it's having an even bigger impact on their life. Can you think of just what are some examples of like knowing that you made that impact? What are some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, helping out on, an IPO is extremely busy. And helping them through the really, really busy times, knocking stuff out. But even when there's lulls, they'll draw on us like, hey, I've got this problem completely unrelated to what you guys are working on. Can you help us with that? And getting those opportunities to add incremental value to something that we're not out there to do, but we've built that trust, we've built that connection. So generally, they come to us first to help them out. And it's like, yeah, I'd love to jump in.
And Tyler and I had the opportunity to work on the IPO he's referring to. And, there was the client relationship component that, he and I develop strong relationships with the client. I just had breakfast not too long ago with the CFO, the CFO who was the CFO at the time at Solar Brands, and just catching up. And most of what we caught up on was, how's the family doing, right? He's got 2 young girls, a son, and it's like, how are they progressing in their life? And that opportunity to truly have that relationship where I care about him, and his family at an individual level. And then on the other side of that, to get to know Tyler, I was brand new to the firm at the time, and to able to develop a relationship with him where I can now see him continue to progress in his career, come into capital markets full time, have his first son, Henry, and get that experience, right? And to be around and support him through not just making our clients' lives easier, but making his life easier and being there as a way to support him through some of those awesome life events. And that's, again, one of the really cool parts about not just viewing our clients as the transactional, how do we just get this project done, but that relational, how do we make their life easier? How do we understand the problems that they're working on a day-to-day basis and try and take those problems off of their plate, or get those problems to be our problems as well, right? And truly taking ownership of that. And I think that special experience that our clients have and our team members have internally is what has been just so rewarding to get to be a part of.
Well, you hit on something, and we have to come back, because I think if I were to look at the title of this podcast, the way my mind has been programmed would probably be thinking of it specifically to the work itself. Yeah. And what you're talking about is like a next level experience. Yeah. And so I think that I have a hunch that will become a recurring theme that I want to touch on. Flo, if you think about some of the projects that you've been on, what is there one that was particularly rewarding or fulfilling for you when you think about what you were able to achieve?
Yeah, of course. So I think this is clearly an example of something that I feel like it's a reoccurring thing that we've seen across for multiple consultants, where they go to a client, they do a great job, and they are either extended for longer periods of time because the client doesn't want to let them go, or they bring in more people, they grow their teams because the client wants to see more people who do excellent things. And so when I think about that, what comes to mind is my current client. So I started on this client a little bit over a year ago, and it was a very difficult time for them because they'd essentially sold all of their assets, and they were closing the doors. So to be expected, people were not happy. People were losing their jobs. So it was a very, very difficult time for them at the time. And so essentially when this happened, some of the management from the accounting department were hired on by the new operator. And so the plan was for them to transition over the next year. And so while we were there, our team essentially, we really put a lot of effort into doing an excellent job and into building a really close relationship with them. And so I think that essentially helped us build some trust, and they ended up trusting us and kind of relying on our work and our service along the way. So essentially, once they had transitioned over, they decided to hire on 6 more of our consultants to go and help them with that transition. But I think this kind of goes back to that trust component. It was not built overnight. It was kind of built over time. And it kind of came down to us being out there doing excellent work and caring about the work that we do, but also really caring about the people as well. I think that was the main differentiator.
You've been doing consulting for a long time. You've different organizations, different teams, worked with a lot of different people, both clients and consultants. How much of that is developed? How much of that is, either somebody's able to do that or not able to do it?
Yeah, I think for me, and Tyler and Flo are great examples. I think a lot of this does boil down to who you are and what you're motivated by, right? And I think this desire to care for the people that you interact with every day. It's part of, as we continue to grow this firm and look at the individuals that will be part of the firm, as we continue to grow and hire, it's individuals that don't just want to come to work and execute on the projects, right? But truly want to go that extra mile, right? And go to the internal events and send the slacks on, hey, your son was born. Hey, you had a wedding. Hey, you had an anniversary, right? And I think it's inherent in who the people are that come here. And then I think it's reinforced because when you feel that care, as Tyler and Flo, I'm sure, can speak to, right? When you feel that care, you truly want to turn around and give it to other people. And that's an incredible thing, to not just be a receiver of the care, but to give that care. And that's, I think, the difference is we bring people in that want this, and then we enhance it every single day because of the actions of everybody that's around us.
Kind of to add to that, I like that you brought on, it's kind of comes down to what motivates you. Yeah. So when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, so like what motivates me to come to work and do a great job and care for people, care for my clients, care for my teammates? And I really think it comes down to your mindset. Yeah. I think having an ownership mindset is super important to the quality of work that you do or the quality of care that you give. So to me, having an ownership mindset essentially allows me to truly care about what I'm doing and truly care about doing the best job that I can at what I'm doing.
Yeah, and Flo's story. So one of the first clients that I was on when I came to Embark, we were just brought out there, simple continuity job. Controller quit unexpectedly. We were just brought in, hey, and we were told, keep the wheels turning so this bus doesn't crash till we can hire a new one. And that was the job, right? And in any month-end close, as anyone who's been in a month-end close knows, there's, really busy times, and then you have lulls, right? Once it's finished. So I told my manager, I was like, hey, we were in the lull period. I was like, I just don't want to sit around, twiddle my thumbs. Like, is there something else like we could help out with? So talk to the CEO. We're like, hey, we're in the lull. We have some free time. Is there any headaches you have, like any pain points like that we can put in the queue to work on? And she gave us one thing, and we went and talked to some people. Well, it turns out there was this one accountant who spent an entire week, 40 hours, doing one accrual. It was brutal. And she's like, yeah, why don't you start there? Because she's like, I don't know like the details, but nothing should take 40 hours.
Seems like there's something to dig into here.
Yeah. So, we dug into it, fast forward a week or two, and we chopped it down to 4 hours. So from 40 to 4, half a day, and ended up, they were over accrued by like $1 million. So not only did we pick up in the P&L, we saved this one person 35 hours during that week. And after that, that's the really long-term project. What was supposed to be 2 to 3 months turned into 3 years, because after we did that, like the floodgates opened, and they're like just forwarded emails like all day, handle this, look at this, look at this. And it's like, I think the light bulb went off like, oh, these guys are legit. Like they know what they're talking about. But I could have easily, and the other person who was out there just sat, and the client wouldn't have known any different that we didn't have a full plate to do. But we wanted I had a desire like, hey, these are people who clearly this one process was not the best, and gave her almost an entire week of her life back every single month. Like that's very rewarding to do.
So what I've heard so far is you've got people who wake up in the morning and get fulfillment from serving other people. You've got, and that then if you're able to work in an environment where you get to go solve those problems, you can hear, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be like, if I was a client, that is the experience that I would want. What other problems can you solve? And by the way, you're making this impact in my personal life as well. And I know you care. Let's rewind a little bit, because, we've touched on the value, right? So like, how do we get to that point? And before we start at the beginning, which you touched a little bit on mindset, But I would be curious if anybody's brave enough to talk a little bit about like, what is the biggest just disaster, like this did not start off well, or like this could have been managed better. I'm sure, we learn from those experiences, but have you been in any situations like that, at any point in your career? And if so, like what was one of those like disaster stories?
No, it's all been perfect.
I was like, I have too many to count. So yeah, I'll go first. I got a bunch of them. No, I think the specific example that comes to mind for me is, was at a kickoff meeting, right, with a brand new client, and had not done my homework, right, in terms of what was this company going through at that moment in time. And you think about wanting to walk in the room and be prepared and truly understand, read press releases, understand what's going on with the organization. And so you get in the meeting and, we're kicking off, and it's like, okay, here's what I'm asking you all to do. And I start asking, just probing questions, trying to understand. And it becomes very apparent to everybody in the room that I have not been keeping up with the news at all related to this client, right? And they just went through a large transaction, and I'm focused on something way over here, right? And the company has now completely shifted focus. And it was this realization for me of making sure that you start off on the right foot and you do the homework before you show up day one. And I was lucky that it was in a situation early enough in my career, and there were people around me that could reinforce, like, hey, Jason, moving forward, this is the lesson to be learned from this, right? We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have situations where we don't start things off on the right foot. And ultimately, you can still have that positive impact. You can still, create a memorable experience for the clients, but it's so much more difficult because now their initial perception of me, right, is that I didn't get prepared. I didn't do the homework and get ready for that meeting. And I think it just proved that if I had done all the prep work, the ability to build that relationship would have been so much easier. It would have gone so much quicker than starting from this place where there's a level of doubt that's in their mind of like, does this person really, care about this organization, want to be here? And ultimately was able to overcome that. But it makes it harder when you start out on that wrong foot.
I'm curious, why didn't you prepare? Was it more that you just didn't know that you needed to do that yet? Or was there like some other stuff going on in your life where you're like, all right, I think I can wing it this time?
Yeah, it's ultimately the busyness of everything else that's going on, right? I was at that point in my time at a stage in my career where I had multiple projects going on at the same time and didn't take that incremental time and effort to prepare, right? That's the difference. A lot of what we talk about here as a firm, a lot of what we focus on, to your point, it's not rocket science, but it's that incremental 2% effort that you have to take in order to create that differential client experience. And in that moment, didn't take that extra effort, didn't prepare, just because I was too busy. And that's not an excuse, right? But that's the reality of not setting myself up for success in that moment.
Well, and then, and so often we hear this, but I think this is a perfect example of like you learn from failure, right? Yeah. So like in the moment, you're like, hey, I don't have time. But then now in retrospect, actually, this will save a considerable amount of time, and now my job won't be harder.
Yeah, I prepare now, knowing that feeling. I don't want to feel it again. So,
how about y'all? Uncomfortable stories that you're comfortable sharing now?
Yeah. So I think, it's pretty expected for us to face challenges and personal struggles all throughout our careers. If you don't face any, then that's very concerning. But I'll say maybe a little bit over 2 years ago, I started on a new client when I was kind of in the middle of a very difficult time in my life. And so I was kind of juggling a crisis in my family and juggling starting on a brand new client. And so essentially, I didn't really communicate to anyone on my team that like I was having a difficult time or that I was feeling overwhelmed juggling both. And so essentially I would show up, I would do the job, I do the work, but I didn't do any extra effort to go above and beyond that. And I just didn't feel like I had the mental or emotional capacity to do anything else. And so in retrospect, I think about how I didn't really do myself or my teammates any good by not being a little bit vulnerable and sharing that, oh, okay, hey, I need a little bit of support. And so I think that essentially it all kind of came down to communication. I know that our teammates and our clients deserve the best version of us. And sometimes that doesn't happen, or it can't happen for whatever reason. And I think that in those occasions, it's okay to ask for support and say, hey, I need you to kind of help fill in here for me, because our clients still deserve like 100% of our service. And so kind of my takeaway from that was to be a little bit more vulnerable about when we need support, when we need help. If we can't be 100% for whatever reason, life happens and there's no shame in that. I think it's essential for us to communicate it to our teams, to let them know, hey, I need some help.
And, part of that too, Jason, Tyler, is as a leader, as a coworker, creating an environment where somebody maybe feels more comfortable to do that. Because that's, that's not easy.
Yeah. And to say, to be clear, it's not because I didn't feel like I wasn't going to receive the support that I needed. I knew that. It was more of a personal thing where I'm like, I'm just going to push through it and it'll be okay. But now I know, okay, that was not okay. Like, what I should have done is reach out to my team and say, hey, like, I'm struggling a little bit and I need a little bit more support.
Team will pick you up.
Yep.
Yeah. How about you, Tyler? Something
Luckily,
really, really good. I mean,
yeah,
he does never mess up. I'm going to switch. I'm going to shift over here so I can hear this one.
Luckily for me, so far, knock on wood, all of my jobs have started out well, but I've definitely made mistakes throughout the job, for sure. I think for me, when I first jumped over to Embark, so this is a long time ago. Back then, it was the Wild Wild West. We've grown up since then. But I felt the need to know every answer, like in the moment, right? Because I'm out there, I'm the face of Embark. I'm in the meeting with the CEO or the CFO or whoever, like someone important at the company, and they're paying me whatever my bill rate is, right? Hundreds of dollars an hour. I felt the need to know every answer, and that in the heat of the moment, I would blurt out something that sounded intelligent. And then, of course, the first thing I do when I get out of that room is go research it, right? Like, okay, is what I said the truth? And, having to then take the walk of shame to go back to them and say, hey, remember that thing I told you? It's partially true. This is the real answer. So I had to learn to get comfortable with, hey, I'm not going to know everything, and that's okay. But I know enough and I have the resources available to get to the right answer, right? Like, it's not all on Tyler, it's on Embark. Like, bringing the firm to the client and not just bringing Tyler to the client. And that took me a long time to learn. But again, similar to you, I never want to take that walk of shame again. So now I've learned, like, if I don't know something similar that I have done before, like, well, I know I've done X, Y, and Z, and this is how I handled it then, but this is just a little bit different. Let me go back and look it up and just make sure that same approach will work, right? Or if I just flat out don't know, like, I don't know. Let me look that up and get back to you. I've never had someone get mad at me for saying, I'm not sure, but let me go look it up and find the answer for you. Like, no one's gotten mad. People have gotten mad when I blurted out something. They've relied on it, and then it's wrong, and I have to kind of eat my words on the back end.
I can relate to that. Why do you think we're pre-programmed to want to have an answer for everything? And then, as we go through life, it's okay to not have the answer for everything. Where do you think that internal pressure comes from?
I mean, for me, it was, hey, you're paying me hundreds of dollars to know the answer. I should know the answer, but I'm sure there's more to it than that.
What do you think, Flo?
Perfectionism. At least for me, I've always kind of struggled with perfectionism, trying to be the best at my job, right? And I think over time, it was kind of a growing moment when I realized, hey, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to know all the answers. I just need to know that I can figure it out and that I can grow and I can learn.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know when that switch flipped for me, but it was pretty early on in my career where being in consulting for 11 plus years now, there's very few conversations I've been in where it's like, oh yeah, like this is exactly what the answer is. Like go forth, and I don't need to go research it or look at it again. And I think I've always been very comfortable. I think you described it well, Tyler, right? Like I would much rather get to the right answer than say the wrong answer quickly. And I think I had individuals around me really early on in my career that modeled that out. And this notion that ultimately everybody's just trying to get to the right answer, and speed to the right answer doesn't get you much if it's not the right answer. Right. And so, I've always tried to model that for other people as it was modeled for me really early on, that like, hey, we may not know exactly what this is. We may not have seen this exact fact and circumstance. Here's what we're thinking about. Here's some considerations. Let me go back and we will get back to you quickly. Right. And that the trust that builds when it's like, hey, I care so much about this problem, about what you're going through, that ultimately I want to get to the right answer, right? I am making your problem my problem. And ultimately it's not about, can I get to the answer in this moment? It's about, do we get to the right answer in the end? And so I had people, I'm trying to think exactly who it was. There was a team of individuals I worked with when I first joined EY over 12 years ago that really modeled that behavior out. And I was able to adopt that at a really young stage in my career, which benefited me a ton. So, but it's hard.
Well, it certainly helps to be around people who can demonstrate that behavior. And what I'm hearing through the successes and the failures is there is, while the people we're working with and the project duration and complexities might change, there is a process. There are some best practices. So let's get into that. And I guess Flo, you mentioned a little bit earlier mindset, and I think we've touched on that a little bit, but I do want to give everybody an opportunity to what is the winning mindset to go into this? What do you need to be prepared for, know, or just wake up in the morning? What's your purpose? What's the right mindset?
I think for me, like when I wake up in the morning and I am thinking about my mindset, I really think about what can I do today to go above and beyond my clients' expectations. Because all of our clients have expectations. I think the general expectation is that you're going to go in and you're going to do the work, right? And whatever they assign you, that's what you're going to do, and then you're going to do it great. But I think that having an ownership mindset is going to go above and beyond that. Like, what can I do to take care of my client today? Like, how can I make their life better today? How can or what else is there that I can do to help them and give them peace of mind today?
Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, I think owning whatever problems the client has as your own, like taking those on as your own problems and putting yourself in their shoes. Like, okay, if I had to deal with this or do that every single day, how would I change it or make it better? Yeah, just getting alongside them and being like, okay, I'm here with you. Like, I see the problem. Let's fix it. I think it just goes back to that ownership mentality.
And there has to be a genuine level of care. Like, this is not, we've all encountered, whether it's in a work setting or in a personal setting, the individuals that will ask you the very basic question, how are you doing? Right. And you can tell the individuals that truly care about the response. They care about, like, oh, I'm not doing well. Okay. I'm now making that, to Tyler's point, I'm making that my problem, right? Like, you're not doing well. How can I help you? As compared to the individuals that are like, here, you're not doing well. So I'm sorry, that sucks. And they boomed on. Right. And I think that mindset, Flo, as you articulated, right? You have to actually care about your client's problems. You have to be intentional about building that relationship from day one or even before day one, right? Getting prepared, leaning in, asking questions, understanding what they're going through and the actual problems they're going through. And that's the biggest part of consulting, is ultimately getting to what are the real problems that we're trying to solve, taking those problems, genuinely caring about them, and then solving them. And I think that's what for me, it's been so much fun and enjoyable to be part of solving these client problems, right? Like it's not just showing up and doing work. It's truly helping companies to go public or close the transaction or get the financial statements out or get the books closed, right? Like if you think about it through the lens of what are we actually achieving in terms of helping these organizations move forward, in terms of helping people get time back, reduce stress, right? Like the impact that this mindset can have, for me at least, it becomes relatively easy to adopt that mindset because I'm getting fulfilled that way, right? Like my bucket is getting filled by serving my clients and serving the individuals I work with every day. And so it's more fun, it's more enjoyable, and it's way more rewarding. So
we've got a mindset to serve others, to care. I don't know, do we start at meeting one, or I'm guessing based on what you said earlier, maybe it's pre-meeting one. What are checklists starting at the top, best practices? How should I prepare for that first call or meeting?
I think for me, it's truly understanding all due dates, and not just from the client's perspective, but because this has bitten me before, but okay, we have the due date, right? But who are the other users of whatever we're preparing, and what's their due date, right? Like what's their end objective, and does it really need to be even earlier than what we need to get it to the client for? So just understanding, I think, clearly all due dates, both internal and external. And then you just work backwards from there, right? And then you can determine on our side, okay, what resources do I need? Do I need more people? Because, it's a very shortened timeline, and the team we have, like, it's just not going to work. But yeah, understanding all due dates, and also after you kick the project off, reconfirm those, because they change all the time. And sometimes that communication doesn't make it back to us till the day or the day before when it's due. And then no one wants to be in that situation. So yeah, know the due dates. And I think just over communicate. I've never had a client tell me, shut up, you're talking to me too much. Like it's usually when I don't communicate enough, like that's when I get in trouble. So I usually tell clients, hey, I'm going to over communicate. You tell me when it's too much and I'll dial back. I've never had a client tell me it's too much. You need to back up a bit.
Well, and by asking those questions too, you mentioned earlier kind of expectation setting, right? So it's almost like you're coming into this, don't assume that the expectation is the same for everybody. Yeah. So go find out some of those expectations. Are those questions that you prepare and then ask during that meeting? Or are those questions that are maybe answered before that meeting?
Both. Because I know like on my current client, like there's some stuff, some areas that they really want us to dig into. They're like, hey, this has to be like perfect, right? And then there's other areas they're like, hey, just kick the tires, make sure it generally makes sense, and let's move on. And that's real important to know, because some of those, hey, let's just kick the tires one, like I was planning to really dive deep, but knowing that, oh, okay, like this is what you need this for, like this is the purpose. It's like, okay, that makes sense. Like we'll just take a light pass and move on. But I think it helps, especially if you have a tight budget, to know where you need to spend that budget and where you don't. Because that's another conversation you don't want to have with the client. It's like, hey, we're going over budget. It's like, okay, well, what have you done so far? Oh, well, I've done, it's like, well, I don't care about that. Why have you spent all your time there? And if you set expectations from the get-go, hopefully you can avoid that situation.
What else would you add, Jason?
Yeah, I think the continual alignment and communication are key. The majority of issues that I've run into with projects is in some way, shape, or form communication, whether it's on the front end with misalignment about what expectations are, or throughout the project, hey, we need more information, or these are the issues that we're running into. And I think one of the things that I have learned through many failures in my career is bad news doesn't get better with time. So if it's going to be bad news, waiting 2 weeks is not going to be better. It's just going to be worse, because now you're delivering bad news and you're not delivering it timely. And so being comfortable in that space of, hey, I need to provide you an update and it's not favorable, right? And that continued alignment throughout. I think as long as people understand where we're at in solving the problem and the problem we're solving, there's at least, understanding and acceptance of that, right? They may be frustrated with how long it's taking or one thing or the other, but ultimately they're aware. And I think that's what people truly want at the end of the day from a client server. So
Yeah. And to add to that, I used to default to, hey, until I can wrap my arms around this and speak to every aspect, like I don't want to bring up the conversation because they're just going to ask me a lot of questions that I don't know the answer to. And kind of what to Jason's point, like, no, let's bring them in and say, hey, here's our plan to tackle this. Because they may know like, oh, we've been down that road. Like that won't work. It's like, okay, well, that's good to know. Like we won't waste hours there. So yeah, even if you don't have all the answers and it's bad news, like bringing them in the loop earlier is always the right answer.
What would you add, Flo?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything that you guys mentioned is very foundational to set the stage to a successful project or engagement. I guess I would add also knowing who you're going to be collaborating with and really understanding what their roles play in the particular project that you're working on. I mean, I've had situations where I don't find out until later down the line. Oh, I need to be reaching out to this person to get this information or this other person for this different type of information. And so just really understanding from the beginning, asking all the right questions about who you're going to be collaborating with, who you need to reach out to, who does what. I think that's very, very important. But also I would add, and this kind of comes back to what Tyler mentioned about like, just not necessarily always having all the right questions or having all the right answers immediately. Just being adaptable, being able to pivot at any time. I mean, I think in my experience, projects don't always go as we plan. And so it's kind of important to... So I really think it's important to be able to just adapt to any situation. Come in with the ability to shift when you need to. I think that's very important as well.
And I think that's where the relationship component, as you have stronger relationships with clients, that adaptability, the responding to mistakes, all of those things become that much easier if there's that foundation from a relationship standpoint that's built on day one, right? And that is why this is so critically important in building that strong relationship. Is you're going to encounter problems, you're going to encounter delays, you're going to encounter course changes in any project. That's inevitable. That's part of consulting, right? And it's part of why the three of us love consulting. Is it's not the same thing over and over again. There are changes. You do have to pivot. You do have to deal with difficult situations. But if you can build that foundation of trust and build those relationships with your team that you're working with and with your clients, you're able to get through all of those hurdles so much easier.
You mentioned earlier, showing up and maybe you could have done some more homework, right? One thing I've heard just in discussions like these is understanding different communication styles of different people. But then even, you mentioned like current events, maybe there's a company news, but also maybe there's something I can find by looking at their LinkedIn profile and just come in there showing that I've done a little bit of homework. That could maybe go a long way too.
Yeah. One of the things that just a small tip that I do is I will, individuals I'm going to engage with, I'll go on their LinkedIn and scroll down the bottom and look at organizations that they're a part of, like boards that they're a part of, where they went to school. If an individual has taken the time and effort to put something on LinkedIn of another organization that is important to them, I should know about that, right? And I should ask questions about that because people love to talk about themselves, especially areas that they're passionate about. And when you can show that genuine interest where you've taken time to prepare, to understand something that's important to them, and you then engage with them in that conversation, it just goes a really long way to continue to build that relationship.
I would be curious to hear the answer from all three of you. And ideally, there's different tools in your toolkit. So if you hear one that's maybe your go-to, is maybe there's another one you could share with the audience. But you talk about the importance of building a relationship early. So we got all these other layers: communication, expectations, and just kind of a roadmap and mindset. But, I'm thinking I'm an auditor. I'm walking in to meet my client for the first time. That's a certain kind of relationship. Or maybe I'm in industry and I'm reporting to the CAO and it's a new project, and that's a different type of relationship as well, at least from a work standpoint, but it's still a relationship. Or, we're talking about consulting. What are some tips that each of you have in terms of just like, how do you start building a relationship so that the first meeting isn't 100% transactional?
I mean, no matter what role you're in, right? Whether you're the auditor or you're in industry or you're the consultant or whoever you are, everyone's human, right? We all have desires, goals, dreams, family. Like we all have passions, right? We all have all these things. Now they may be different for every person, but we all have them. So I think connecting to someone on the human level first, like build that personal connection. And whatever your particular role is that you have to do, it'll go easier. Whatever it is, it'll go better if you connect with them on a human level first.
Yeah, I agree. But also to add on to that, don't be afraid to have fun with them. If they invite you to a happy hour, go build relationships. I think spending time with them, even outside of work, goes a long way, right? Or go eat lunch with them, invite them out to lunch one day. I think just building those genuine connections is going to take more than just collaborating with them at work. Like, yes, ask them about themselves, have those conversations with them, but also don't be afraid to have fun as well.
I'm glad. I love that you mentioned that, because that first happy hour may be a little awkward.
Yeah.
Because you don't know them that well. But again, being on long-term clients, the first happy hour compared to the one a year, 2 year, 3, like it truly is so much fun because you've gotten to know this person. And yeah, the wild conversations you'll have at the later ones versus the earlier ones, like it is a lot of fun.
Well, and it's funny I'll say that because that was going to be the thing I would say is just continue to show up, right? Like some relationships just click day one, right? You have shared interests, you are able to identify those quickly, you're able to dive in, the individual's willing to open up. And those are great, right? Those are easier relationships. But for the relationships where it doesn't just immediately click, continue to show up, right? Like everyone is seeking some level of relationship, is wanting to be able to have fun at work, right? And to be able to engage with people that they like being around. And so just continuing to show up for your teams, continue to show up for your clients, because sometimes it does take longer than you want it to. But in my experience, those are sometimes the ones that are the most worth it, right?
Well, and Flo, you mentioned at the outset of the discussion that, you never know what somebody might be going through as well too. So maybe it doesn't seem, maybe there's a wall. It seems like it's there, but it could be for reasons that time will sort itself out. Yeah. Before we move on to, getting into the engagement, just anything during that first meeting, you talk about, scoping, setting expectations, adjusting if need be. Is there any, I guess, what is, when you finish that meeting, it's successful if fill in the blank?
I think it's successful if you feel confident that you are set up for success. I feel like if you have all the answers that you don't have to have all the answers, but if you feel confident that you can go in day one and perform, then I think it's been a successful meeting, in my opinion.
So if I'm walking away from that first meeting and I'm like, oh my gosh, probably there's something I need to adapt, ask some more questions or prepare better.
Yeah.
Anything else on the checklist?
I think for me, it's validation of next steps, right? Like there's a lot of times in that first meeting, there's 100 different things that we could focus on first and different priorities. And I think, Tyler, you hit on it well, right, around what are the deadlines? But I think understanding where are we going from here? And oftentimes that's not, when I walk out of the meeting, it's not what I thought going in. And that's when, it's like, okay, that was a fruitful discussion because we truly validated what is most important to them or reinforced what's most important to me to be able to move forward. But just that clear identification of where we're going in those next steps is, when I walk away feeling most comfortable about a good kickoff meeting.
One other perspective to consider this from, as people get further into their career, they might be managing a team of folks. If you have that lens on, what are some things that you want to do to make sure that your team and the client are both set up for success?
It's different when it's just you or just you and one other person, right? Like that's easy to manage. Like my current client, I've got a team of 5 people underneath me, and then I have an MD above me. Like that's, 6, 7 people, including myself. Like that's a lot of people to coordinate, make sure everyone is cared for, make sure everyone has clear direction, is not spinning their wheels. Like I think, again, communication, like just checking in with everyone. And I think organization, like the larger your team gets, you must be organized. Like I think people may kill me for saying this, but it's kind of optional when it's just you and maybe one other person to have like a true organizational plan and structure. But it's not a choice when your team grows beyond like you and one other person. You have to write things down. You have to have a plan. You have to have a structure in place to make sure you are going to hit the end goal on time with good quality deliverables.
And it helps to meet the needs of the team, right? When it's just you, ultimately, you're going to organize your thoughts and your to-do list the way that suits you. Mm-hmm. But when it becomes a larger team, when it becomes a more complicated project, when there's multiple client individuals, right? You have a variety of different individuals that want different levels of information, that want information in a different timing, right? And that level of organization becomes that much more important because there are that many more users of your time and your allocation of resources. And so it's critical to continue to stay organized, especially as the team grows. 100% agree.
And you learn how, different types of people digest information and how they operate. And you tend to default to what you like best, but that may not work for 1 or 2 people on your team. Yeah. And you'll learn it over time. But I think figuring out, okay, I know this person doesn't care about all the information. They just want to know, okay, what do I need to do? When does it need to get done? How am I going to get there? Right. And then you have another person who they can't move forward if they don't know the bigger picture. Like, okay, why am I doing this? Like, why is this important other than you just telling me I have to do it? Like, why? And they can't get past that. And you just have to learn the different people on your team and how they work and how they operate.
Yeah. And I would say from the opposite side, I think it's also important to create an environment where your team feels comfortable to come to you, right? If they're struggling through something work related, right? I think oftentimes we have situations where someone might be spinning their wheels, or we might not be making progress on a certain project because they're afraid to ask questions, or they're afraid to come, not afraid, but they're not comfortable coming to you and asking you directly. And I think just kind of setting the environment where they feel comfortable to do that is also really important from a management standpoint.
What are some approaches that have worked for you in that area? Something
I like to do is, and I don't do this every morning specifically, but I like to come to my team and just chat with them, just have a morning chat or, morning coffee or whatnot, and just kind of see how their day is going. And then from there, I'll is there anything going on today? How's work going? Because so on my team right now, we don't specifically we're not all working on the same things. And sometimes our projects can be very siloed, but I always like to make myself available if they have any specific questions that I might be able to help on. And so for me, just kind of having daily chats with them, even if we're not working on the same projects, I think that has kind of made it easier for them to be able to approach me if they do have any questions.
And I think that daily connectiveness, you can also begin to tell when people are off or when something's going on or they're stressed, because you've got enough data points that you understand sort of the normal course of that conversation, the normal way that they respond to your questions. And so when you have enough of those data points, you spend enough time and energy to build those relationships, you can truly identify when people need that incremental support to get through whatever it is they're getting through. And I think that's one of the cool things about truly focusing on building relationships is on the back end, it actually makes your job easier, right? It takes more time and effort. It takes more work, but it allows you to understand who can support you, understand who's been through this before, and understand when someone needs that incremental support because you have a relationship with that person where you understand them beyond just the surface level.
How about client communication? Is there, I'm sure it can vary by project, but what's a healthy cadence? What's, when do I follow up?
I would say minimum weekly, bare minimum. I think it depends on the client. Like I've had some where once a week is perfect. I've had on the other end of the spectrum, like where I meet with them twice a day, every day. It depends on the job.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the way your client communicates best. It's kind of funny because I've had clients where I've gone just this random email, like, take a look at this, no context whatsoever. So it's kind of really important to understand, okay, hey, like, what is the best way to communicate with this particular client? How can I best get the information that I need to successfully complete this task or this project? And so kind of really taking the time to understand your clients specifically. I mean, like you said, every client's going to be very different and they're going to have different needs and different communication styles. So taking the time to understand that, I think it's very essential.
And I think it's important not to just guess or assume, and really challenge and ask them, like, what is the way in which you like to receive information? How frequently do you like to receive information, right? Being open to what do they want. And as being in client service, you are in service to your client. So what is the best way that they want to be served? And being open and okay with whatever that answer is, right? I think oftentimes, and I think you said it, Tyler, right? We default to our the way in which we like to receive communication. And then it takes how many long slacks before you realize that I'm not going to read them. And so you just start calling me.
Yeah, very quickly. But I think too, like just having fun, right? Like, yeah, it's work. And at the end of the day, the work has to get done, but that doesn't mean you can't have fun while you're doing it. And, I like to start meetings. I try to, I don't do it every time, but like something non-work related. And anyone who's worked with me knows I have a lot of hot takes on things. So I usually start a meeting with a hot take of mine and then just let the conversation go from there. But it's just, having, and two, you kind of break the ice, right? But you get to know people that way because then they like open up a bit and share something that's, going on in their life.
There are so many nuances to this that it almost seems, it's impossible to predict all of them. And I'm sure experience teaches you things, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to take some of the same approaches of the questions that you're going to be asking to a client. Like, what form of communication do you prefer? But then applying that to everybody. And it's almost like if you can just go into it, even if you don't know what you're doing, but you've got some questions going into it to really understand who people are, where they're at, what their goals or challenges might be, you're at least going to put yourself in a really good position, and then you'll adapt as you go.
Yeah. I mean, this mindset, one of the things that for me in my role, I really focus on is, I am serving the clients internally, right? Flo and Tyler and you, Kyle, like you all are my clients that I'm in service to in my role in Dallas. This mindset is the exact same thing, right? Like, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How's your client doing? What are the problems they're facing, right? Like this mindset is not just a external client service mindset. This is a way of operating where you get more reps, but two, you're able to truly, genuinely get to know the people you work with within your own company, right? And so for those of you sitting on audit teams or sitting in industry, not in client service, this is still incredibly applicable in the way that you approach all of the individuals that you engage with on a daily basis.
Well said. It's interesting. It also makes me want to change the title of this a little bit because there's so many takeaways that can be applied across different all different relationships. Depending on what kind of project you're on, you've got, your deliverable, or you might have a presentation. I think, we've touched on a lot of ways that you can get information and adapt and understand what that target is and how to deliver it. But is there anything you would add specific to presentations on how to structure it, or your deliverables, how to present it, or make sure that you've hit the mark? Is there any best practices that we need to discuss?
I don't know about presentations. PowerPoint's dead. Everyone hates PowerPoint, but
hot take.
Tyler,
Hot take.
This falls in the hot
Okay.
take bucket.
but I think, we live and breathe in Excel, right? Like everyone touches Excel. So whenever you're putting together whatever that thing is, I've learned to look at it through the viewpoint of, okay, one, who's my end user? Normally, it's like CEO or controller or something like that. Okay, these people are incredibly busy, right? They may not need or want to know all the minute details that we went through to figure this out. But I try to put a summary, whether it's a tab or at the beginning of a Word doc or whatever it is, high level kind of executive summary, if you will, of here's the problem, here's what we did, here's the answer, right? Bullet point. And then, oh, hey, by the way, everything else in here, like if you want to dive in, it's here for you. Feel free, knock yourself out. But here's what you need to know. And here's the key takeaways.
Yeah, I would say pretty similar to everything that you said. I mean, you kind of summed it up really well. Kind of depending on your audience, like really knowing your audience, knowing who the end receiver is super important. For me, for example, if I'm emailing the controller, I know that he probably doesn't want a list of questions, right? So knowing like exactly, okay, how can I best grab his attention, let him know, hey, this is what I need, and making sure that when he receives it, he's not like overwhelmed or like, oh gosh, I have to answer all these questions. And so kind of knowing your audience is super important, knowing how they want to receive information, or what the best way for them to receive information is.
The only other thing I would add, I agree with everything Tyler and Flo both said. The only thing I would add is there's a power in verbally talking through things with people, right? One of the things I've learned is tone cannot be conveyed through written form, no matter how hard you try. And so, when you send over an email for like something that's wrong or a difficult conversation, right? Making sure that there is space to talk through how we got here or what happened or how it's going to be resolved, right? And for me, as someone who is very much a verbal processor, I want to talk through things. I do not want to read a lot. Understanding that that's not everybody's default way of communication, but when you're having delivered difficult news, doing it verbally so that you can answer questions and frame out how we got here or what questions they have is very, very powerful.
Is there anything else that we should have talked about that we haven't?
I mean, one thing is just kind of something to think about, but I think a lot of what we've said is building those relationships, right? So if you invest and build kind of that goodwill with people, you'll have this bank for when problems do, because they will come up. It's just a matter of time. But when those problems come up, you have some goodwill with those people that you can draw from, to where if you haven't made that human connection, if you haven't, a problem comes up, they're just going to get angry and mad and frustrated, right? And they still may, depends on the problem, I guess, but at least you have that relationship that you have a good foundation to start from, to start that conversation with, instead of having spent no time trying to get to know this person. And then you're like, oh, this is wrong. Yeah. Sorry. It helps.
That's hearing you say that, I'm recalling a few experiences where I could have, that definitely was an oversight, laziness, whatever have you on my part. But anything else y'all want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. Just taking the time to really care for your clients and care for your teammates. I think in the long term, it really pays dividends. I mean, we've seen it so many times here with our own consultants. where I know we use this a lot, but where they land and expand, I think that's pretty common around here. And it's because we take the time to be able to really get to know our clients and to get to really know what they need and how to provide an excellent service to them.
Yeah, the only thing I would say in closing is I think the acknowledgement that this is hard. Like this is, we talk about it as if it's easy to do, and that's not the case, right? This is a very hard thing that you have to be intentional about every single day. And there's going to be days where you just don't feel like doing this, or you mess it up, or you don't do it well. And guess what? The next day you can try better and you can do better. And I think that notion of this is not easy, this is the hard way to do things, but that ultimately reaps such a larger benefit going through life and engaging with clients in this way. And I think we've seen it throughout this firm that, individuals are happier, our clients are happier because we're continuing to strive to do this, not because we do it perfectly every single time, but this is the mindset that we're trying to operate within. And so I think just encouraging, everybody who's watching this to, lean into this where you can, how you can, and just try and continue to positively impact the clients you engage with. So
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because mistakes, lessons, life is going to happen. Let's end with this. We've created a new technology where you can deliver whatever you want, one nugget of wisdom to yourself back on your very first project. What would you say to yourself to just maybe save some time, energy, mistakes, or just get in the right mindset?
I think it would be, don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? And don't be afraid of learning and growing. I think, especially at the beginning of my career, I was very hard on myself about, hey, like, you gotta, be the best at this all the time. And so I think that kind of poses a lot of pressure on yourself. And sometimes that's actually counterintuitive, right? Sometimes that actually doesn't allow you to develop relationships because you are kind of very in your head. And so to me, it would be, don't be afraid to learn and make mistakes as you grow. Because at the end of the day, challenges and getting out of your comfort zone is what's going to help you grow.
Awesome.
Mine's similar to Flo's. It would be trust your gut. I think we all have had experience, whether it's education in school or trainings at our employers or different experiences from a work perspective. And I think for me, at least, I probably didn't give myself a lot of credit throughout my career, and just trusting that I'm in the right place for the right reasons, that I'm qualified to do this. And I have a team of people around me that will support and ensure I can be successful, and not, being okay with that. So,
yeah, Jason stole mine. Trust your gut. I think
lead with hot takes.
lead with hot takes. Yeah. Break the ice.
He's already doing that. He's been doing that forever. So that's
not
a new one.
Since day one. No, I think don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Jason knows I'm a perfectionist. And I still am. I just cope with it now. But making mistakes, it's the worst thing to me. But it's okay, right? Ask for help. If you don't know, you don't have to know everything. We have 500 plus people at the firm now. Someone here knows the answer. It doesn't have to be you.
Yeah.
That's why you work at a firm and not by yourself. So yeah, reach out.
Great stuff. I've learned a ton. I think this will be incredibly valuable, and I just appreciate each of you making time and sharing your wisdom and being a little bit vulnerable. Flo, Tyler, Jason, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.